From CBC News.
From CBC News, it's the world this hour. I'm Joe Cummings. MPs are back in the House of Commons today as Parliament resumes following the holiday break. And as we hear now from Janice McGregor, the ruling Trudeau Liberals take to the floor with an agenda top-heavy with a number of pressing issues.
The first few weeks of this sitting might be somewhat of a pre-game show for Chrystia Freeland's next federal budget. Spiking inflation, unsustainable increases in the cost of living. The government's labor relations with civil servants are really challenging right now. So this government has yet to deliver on pledges to overhaul employment insurance, legislation to enact its plan to help fossil fuel workers transition to jobs in cleaner industries. That's a strategy that's already picked a fight with Alberta's premier. And then there's the fact that the New Democrats may not feel that they can continue supporting this minority government if that budget doesn't include substantial investments in healthcare. And we're not just talking about the progress on dental care and pharmacare, but increased funding to cut wait times and improve access to primary care like the premiers have demanded and now seem on track to get if February 7th goes well. That's the day next week when the Prime Minister and the premiers will sit down for what both sides are calling a working meeting. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
The World Health Organization is saying the COVID-19 pandemic is not over. It says after 3 years, the threat from the coronavirus still poses a public health emergency of international scope. There had been some speculation that the WHO was on the verge of announcing the end of the COVID-19 crisis. To date, the virus has killed close to 7 million people around the world. That includes 50,000 here in Canada. At least 28 people are dead following a bomb attack on a mosque in Peshawar, Pakistan. That's emergency response vehicles arriving at the scene of the blast. Many of the victims are police officers, as the mosque is located inside a building that also houses a police station. As many as 150 people are injured. At this point, there's been no claim of responsibility. Less than a year ago, a similar attack on another mosque in the city claimed 64 lives. A memorial ceremony was held last night marking the 6th anniversary of the Quebec City mosque shooting.
These people were targeted because of their faith, because of their culture. These attacks were motivated by hatred and Islamophobia.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, among the dignitaries taking part in the service, noted by his absence, incidentally, was Quebec Premier François Legault. Mourners sat shoulder to shoulder on the floor of the mosque prayer room where the gunman opened fire on January 29, 2017. Palestinian officials say Israeli troops shot and killed a 26-year-old Palestinian today at a checkpoint in the occupied West Bank. This latest death, one of more than a dozen in recent weeks, comes as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to arrive in Israel for talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
There is no question that this is a very difficult moment. We've seen the horrific terrorist attacks in recent days. We've seen over many months rising violence that is affecting so many. We'll be encouraging the parties to take steps to calm things down, to de-escalate tensions.
Blinken is on a 3-day visit to the Middle East. He spent most of his day today in Cairo. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tells the BBC that in the weeks leading up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he had a disturbing conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
He threatened me at one point and said, Boris, I don't want to hurt you, but with a missile it would only take a minute or something like that,
That's Johnson describing a phone call in a BBC documentary. Johnson says the threat was issued after he had told Putin that a war in Ukraine would result in Western sanctions and more NATO troops along Russian borders. The Kremlin denies the story, insisting that the former British Prime Minister is lying. And that is the world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Joe Cummings.